Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Perspectives. I am Lyzeth, and
This is Martina and her baby microphone that just fell out of her hand. Welcome to Perspectives. Glad to have you folks. Let's see. Lisette and I have, we've been doing a series for people that have been joining in and listening. Lisette, I think we can actually probably promote this when we actually post the video. But we have also have two platforms so people can
yeah,
watch us, or well, not watch us, but listen to us, I guess we should say. Lisette has been working hard and diligently. She has gotten our video up into a podcast. So we are now on Spotify and iTunes. So we'll be sure to add some links to that at the end of the videos for you all. But yeah,
yes.
as I was saying, we are just continuing our discussion around white supremacy. I know last time we got into some deep issues, but these are these are some very deep issues that we're continuing to get into. So for the next two videos, you'll see that we continue this discussion. Primarily, what we're going to be talking about for this video is continuing the discussion around police brutality that we've seen, way before George Floyd. And years before that. But as many of you know in the country and probably across the world, we had the trial for George Floyd's case to convict the cop that took his life. And I believe that kicked off in March and just concluded last week with a guilty verdict.
Yes.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then we're also going to talk about some more unfortunate deaths that have happened at the hands of police officers here in the United States, and also looking a little bit more into what exactly is the police state? Like, what is the police system? Like, what does that mean here in the United States? And so I'll turn it over to Lisette to kick us off with maybe some of her thoughts, and then we will return to me.
Yeah. No, I think as you mentioned, this particular topic, we had done a video on it and an episode on it previously, and we knew that we had to kind of follow it up because it's just there's so much more and there's just so much more to talk about. And I think when we look at the trial that just concluded last week, and there was this sort of, I would say, like this release of breath as you were waiting for that verdict to be uh, shared or called out, and the fact that you can't even breathe until you kind of didn't know what to expect. Like you were, I think a lot of people were like trying not to get their hopes up too much.
I was one of those people because I just didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been here before where we thought that the evidence was showing like, hey, the cop did something wrong, like there should be accountability, and the accountability wasn't there.
Yeah.
So it's hard to sort of keep hope alive. Like I think it's one of those things where people are like, you got to be positive, you got to keep hope alive, and it's like it's not that easy, not when you've have had a history of keep having hope and then it just being shattered and you're just like, here we go again. um so when I heard guilty, I sort of was like a little bit in shock because it was just one of those things where it's just like, what just happened? Like we really got a guilty verdict on all three,
All three counts.
on
Yep.
all three counts. Like it
All
wasn't just
three.
like the lesser one, right? Like it wasn't just like the
Yeah, it
lesser,
wasn't just like one or two of them. It was all three,
all
and without
three.
bail. You know.
Yes. And even then I think I started hearing, I heard people say like, oh, justice has been served, and we've got justice. And I've heard others say like, this isn't justice. Like we might call this an accountability, but this is just a step towards justice.
Yeah.
And that really got me thinking, because I was like, wow, like it really isn't, because it's one case out of how many out there, out of how many we don't even know, right? Because some of them aren't recorded, some of them don't have someone that's brave enough to stay there and record the whole thing, and stand there and do that. And I think it definitely was a moment of reflection for me, just to be like, okay, then what's next? Like
Yeah.
what needs to happen? We heard a lot of I think white people say justice, and say like justice has been served and things. And then you had a lot of people of color saying, no, this isn't justice. This is accountability, and it's one step towards justice. It's one step towards getting there, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think that's where it left off for me, where it's like, okay, what else needs to happen? What do we need to do? Like what needs to change? Um what needs to be, whether it's dismantled, rearranged, or whatnot. And I think that's where this trial kind of left me at, like, okay, it's one step, but it's one step in, I think I said this the other day to you, is like it's one step in like 1,000,001 to go.
Well, I'm over here snickering, but you are absolutely right. And what you really have said is this is not justice, it's accountability. And I get more into that a little later, but I just wanted to point that out, that I really like what you said, because that is this is accountability, and we have a long way to go. Long way to go. But it is definitely a great step forward, because I, like, similar to you, because I think the trial, or like, well, I think the verdict came down a little bit after 4 or something like that,
Yep.
Central Time here. And so I was still working, and so I was in my room working, and my roommate was sitting in the living room, and I got the text from her. She was like, "The verdict's being read," so I ran out to go hear, because I just didn't know what to expect. I was just, me, my mama, my dad, my brother, we, just praying. It was like, because that's all we could do at this point. There was, nothing else, to do, is just pray about it. And that's what we were doing. So I'm texting my parents and my brother, and we were just like stunned, like, like everybody else. We were like, oh my God. And like you're saying, like on all 3 counts, he has been rejected bail. His ass should not be free. And it's so interesting that, I didn't watch the trial. Like I would read the articles and then I got updates and everything like that. But it's just so, from the articles that I've read, or people just, talking with folks, saying that the whole time in trial, he just was emotionless. Like, I know we all wearing masks and it's hard to see people's emotions, but you can see stuff in people's eyes. The eyes tell you a lot. And people were like, it's just was like no concern in his eyes. He was just like whatever. It just didn't seem like he cared either way, really. He was just there. And like, okay. Yeah. And I was like, that's very telling too. I just think, because nothing, not even crying, like nothing. He's just, I don't know. I just think that's very interesting, because he's on trial, and we have I think his actual sentencing will come down like in the next 7-8 weeks, something like that. I think
so.
He'll be sentenced, so we actually know what his time will be. But I just found that very interesting. Like, no emotion, just I'm sure his career. I hope his career being a cop is over and done. But yeah, I just found that interesting, that he just had no emotion in his eyes either way.
No, I'm glad you saw that too, because I definitely was looking at him as they were reading the verdicts, and there was nothing. It was sort of just this like blank kind of look in the eyes, and I was like, did you just expect it one way or another? Did you just not care? To each their own, right? Like, you can react to however you want the situation. We all react differently. Like, I don't know how I would react if I'm sitting there and suddenly I'm told guilty of all charges, and I was expecting it to go a different way. And maybe you get into shock, but it was just so, I don't know, it was just very, for me, it was just very awkward and weird to see an individual pretty much, like, it was just a very,
I know, that's how I feel too.
Like, I can't even express it right.
I know what you feel, because like my mom and I were talking about this, and we're like, it's just he's really hard to read, but not really hard to read. I don't know, and and this is a side note of this. I don't know, like, is he married? Does he have kids? Like,
I don't
how
know.
are their lives being affected by this? I mean, not just now, but over the last year, and like, how is it going to be affected? I
Yeah.
forgot to use my tiny microphone because I'm just so used to using my hands. But um, yeah, yeah, because it seemed like he just not much concern, just really indifferent. It would be, I'm sure soon as he's sentencing, or like his sentencing is done, I wonder, would he be open to doing interviews with like ABC or NBC or Fox to
Yeah.
actually talk about it? But he seems like a real hard ass.
Yeah. He seems like someone that is just gonna go away and just be like, I'm
Yeah,
done.
because he seemed like he's like just internally like racist, even though I don't know him. I never want to know him or meet him, but he just
Mhm.
seemed like he's one of those people that's like, yeah, I ain't doing none of that shit. I'm not. I don't care. Y'all said I killed him. Okay. Well, he just, that's the like type of vibe. And so he doesn't seem like a very a heartwarming person. Especially after that video, which I still to this day have not seen the video. I know millions of people have, but that's not not for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it is interesting, and I know that there will be a trial for the other officers that were
Yeah.
involved. I believe starting in August of this year, that
Mhm.
the that trial will kick off as well. So at least it is one down, one down. But as we mentioned, with that accountability piece, because that's really what it is, and accountability for me, again, I was in a lot of texting and calling that day when this happened, and I was in a group text with
Yeah.
friends. And all of us were like, yeah, he got it, and this and that. And then another friend was, she was being real. She was just basically like, look, y'all, this is great, but I still don't like cops, and this ain't gonna change nothing. And I was like, exactly, this is why we need systemic changes. That is what will make this accountable. So that's what we were telling her in this text message, and it went on longer, but we're like, to me, a part of that accountability piece is the systems that need to be changed.
Yeah.
Like, that's is what is going to have to make this more accountable. And you and I get a little bit more into the whole policing a little bit in like another video.
Later. Yeah.
But I really think in order to have accountability, the systems are going to have to be changed. And unfortunately, I believe it was Chris Como who basically said, also, what's not it's not going to change until you see little white kids out here getting shot too. Then of course, if we got Becky and Tom out here getting killed, well, honey, we got to shut it down. We got to start new. We got to figure it out. This, how's this happening in our neighborhoods? Like, oh my God. We'll get some changes then. But Lord,
Yeah.
is that really what it's going to take? I mean, because then again, that's still other lives lost.
Lives. Yeah.
Other lives
Like we
lost.
don't want, and I think that's you bring up such a good point, because I did see that clip of Chris Cuomo say that, and it made me think of like, are we so, you know not caring of others that we would want it to get to that place where white kids are also getting gunned down by police unnecessarily? Like we don't, like, people of color don't want to see that happen. Like we don't want it to happen to any kids, like kids, adults,
Adults, yeah,
like
it should be
we
anybody.
don't want that to happen. Like we don't want people to have to like see
Lose their
that, because
lives and families just
we
losing
don't wish we what happens to us, I don't wish it to anybody else. Like it's terrible to live in this state of fear, of
their.
constant vigilance. Like we don't, like, I don't want that to anybody else, because it's terrible to like walk, and like I said, like I can never know what walking out for you, Martina, what it feels like to walk out into our you know country and our society. But it's like, no, like we don't want that to happen, and
Mm-mm.
Lord forbid that it gets to a point where you start seeing it happen to,
Because honestly, because at that point, when it's hit the white people,
yeah,
that's almost like a place of no return. At that point,
yeah, like point of no return. Like
it's
this is it.
bad. If they out here
Yeah,
killing little Tom and Becky and them, it's real. I mean, it's bad. It's bad enough anyway. And
yeah,
we trying to figure out what to do. But at that point, like that's almost like an America I wouldn't recognize. But then I
yeah,
would say the same now. Like I mean, and again, you and I always go back to this. We talk about like this is stuff is not new, and I shouldn't say stuff, but people losing their lives for just senseless things police officers have done.
Yeah.
And not all police officers are white; they're of color. There are women too that have been a part of this, but it's still that system that they're in. It's just like, what else is it going to take for change? And that's the discussions I've been having with you and with other people. Just what is it going to take? Because I feel like every other day, every other week, just like you and I were talking about mass shootings yesterday. That's another video
That's
for that.
another.
But every time we turn on the news or you wake up in the morning, go to sleep at night, Lord, it's another
Something.
mass shooting. It's, again, it's the same thing. It's another person of color that's lost their lives.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and all this has happened, like, I mean, the majority of what we're focusing on has happened still in a pandemic.
Yes.
People still are not fully back to 100% at
Yeah.
all. And we just got just so much chaos in the world. And it seems like people pussyfooting around, they are not taking it seriously. I don't know what it is, but it is very frustrating for someone. I see myself as somewhat of a progressive, and people haven't figured out from but, I have different beliefs, and I respect people's beliefs, whatever they may be.
Yeah.
But I'm just, at this point, something needs to be done. Like, we know the last administration shit happened.
You-
I think they gave out a few checks that, oh my God. And I know Biden and Kamala had came into a mess. I know they did. It's a mess. And as most administrations, minus this previous one, they try to do the best they can.
Yeah.
But I do feel like Biden and Kamala got to come out with something. Like, something has to get done over the next 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what they're gonna come up with. Lord, I hope it's not another fucking task force. Oh God, I hope not another task force. You know how I feel about another.
You know how governments love their task force, though.
Girl, they love these task force. I'm trying to think of another name for them, but I know these damn task force.
Governments love their
Girl,
task force.
love task force, and I'm like, please don't. But and if you do come out with one, please let it be about something. Don't just put a bunch of
Yes.
experts and smart people with PhDs and experiences in a room together
Yes.
and no lived experience or nothing. Try to be, because you and I've talked about task force before, but you know how I feel. But yeah, I'm just like, it's still, they have so much to do. And they can't do it all in this time that they have. This is gonna be for centuries, but probably because it's taken centuries for us to get to where
Yeah.
we are. And so I just think it's gonna take some time, but I just feel like we're not moving fast enough. That's just me.
No, I think you're right. I think there's a need to move things faster than what they're doing now. I think there's a sense of urgency
Mm-hmm.
from communities. I think about Chicago, like a city like Chicago, who, we hear shootings happen here and there, and it's some of it's police related and some of it's not. But I think that there is that urgency because, I mean, I think people are just losing their lives unnecessarily. And I think there's a way to really restructure our police force. There's a way to sort of create this accountability. And I think there's a way to do it. I'm not the expert on this. Like, I don't know what it looks like, but I know that
That's
there's,
called perspectives. I
yes.
think I got lipstick on my mic. Sorry, Mike. Okay. Yes.
And but it's definitely things that you and I hear about in the circles that we're in, and things I know I fear. Like, I have friends that are out there and are, and you just kind of never know when they're traveling, whether it's across the city or across the state or across the country, like what may happen to them, and especially if they're males, and you're like, you don't wish anything to happen, but our country is so volatile
Well,
towards.
I still think some of the focus on males is patriarchy,
Yeah.
but I understand. Um, because we're going to talk about
we'll get there.
we'll get there a little bit later today. A young lady that lost her life this week too, or not this week, but over the past few weeks. But you do bring up a good point, because I will say, and I don't want to get to the patriarchy, but I got to talk a little bit about it.
Let's go there.
Say, because my mama is the same. So my brother helps to take care of my mom, and so he's often running errands for it. And for people who may not know, I'm from Mississippi. My mom and my brother still live in Mississippi. They live real close together. And so my mom, since everything that's been going on, of course, I think maybe it started with last summer, or maybe a few years now. My mom has asked my brother to give her a call before he goes off to work in the morning, and when he is leaving work in the evening. And that just calms her heart. And me, I was being petty, and so I was like, well, what about me? My mom was like, now I worry about your ass up there in Chicago all the time. She's like, she always say, I can't get my hands on you. If something happens, I can't get my hands on you. That's always. I remember one time, my mom, I had a really bad case of strep throat. Like, it took me out for a few weeks. I was in grad school. I probably was going into the end of the second week where I was getting a little bit better. But my mom was like, well, I'm just have to come up here. I'm gonna have to come up there because.
Aww.
So I would say my mom, she loves both of her children, but she was just saying, because there seems to be this focus just on the Black males or Latino males that are, getting shot or getting killed by police brutality. And then, we don't hear too much about the females. And just like, you and I were talking earlier before this, was saying, there are cases across the country that we have no idea, and like none of us do. So I know there are, unfortunately, young Black and brown girls and women that have lost their lives. And, I think the media needs to do a better job covering that. That's all that, I think, because a lot of this is about the angles of media and advertising and marketing and all that type of shit. And this doesn't take away from the brothers, both Latino and the Black brothers. I'm just saying that your sisters are out here struggling too. So we are afraid for you and for ourselves. So we have to be afraid for everybody. So it's just like, yeah, it's just.
No, I think you bring up a good point, because I think when we think of, and it just came to my mind, when we think about police brutality, we think of cops shooting other people or causing death, murdering them, however you want to call it. And we don't think about, police brutality in the sense of how many arrests are happening in communities of color, and thinking of like what that accountability looks like, and where while we might not hear of women of color being shot or killed, we don't hear a lot about the incarceration rates of women.
That's
which when it falls into that. I think when it comes to policing, because policing to me in our conversations in the next few episodes around police is not just about the brutality, it's just the policing in general, right? And you think about how you don't hear about that, because I remember, I think it was like a year or two ago, where I was at a conference and they were talking about the rates of incarceration for women were trending higher, and there was no real reasoning as to why, or like at least they didn't go into detail as to like why. And one of the surprising things I saw was Native women, and I was like, what? And you and I talk about the erasure of Native and Indigenous people of this country all the time, and how you don't hear about them, but just to kind of hear that, and it was just so eye-opening at the moment, because I was like, I never think about women in general and that incarceration rate and what that policing of women looks like. And because our TVs, our social medias are so saturated by the male perspective, and that's where the patriarchy comes in, where they want to keep focus on the male perspective and not so much on the female or the women. So it's just, so I think you bring up a good sort of point, and one that I think it's valid to talk about and to bring up and figure out what that looks like. Uh, because while I haven't had any interaction with policing, and that's probably because I don't leave my house that often. Like, let's be honest, I ain't out because it's just my introvertedness of it. But there's plenty of other women, Martina.
Mhm.
But there's plenty of other women that do, and who are out there, going, essential workers going out at different hours of the day to work and experiencing police encounters that are negative and maybe brutal or whatnot, and we don't hear about them.
No.
You're not, because it's not what, I hate to say it, it isn't what sells. We know that media always looks at what sells, what gets those views. um and I think if we look at what happened to, I hope I don't butcher her name, Ma'Khia Bryant, I believe that's how you pronounce her name.
I'm shaking my head in agreement. Yes, because I'm gonna need your help pronouncing it later. So yes. Mm-hmm.
And you heard about it because it happened the same day of the trial.
True.
And then after that, there was very little information that I saw. Like, I don't know about you, Martina, but I didn't see a lot outside of like maybe some of the people I follow, like on social media, posting things about it and trying to keep her name and like the situation afloat. Like, there wasn't a lot of things that I saw after a while. Like, I think
Yeah.
by like Friday of that, like, I saw nothing.
And the thing is too, shoot, I've kind of lost my point, but I was gonna say, oh yes, if you're not specifically searching her name, you probably won't find too much about her. I think I would say compared to some of the other larger cases that we've seen, that we know this can blow up. Hers, and I don't want to use blow up because this shouldn't be something that blows up, but to the level that we've seen with even with a Breonna Taylor, I think a lot of people knew more about her, even though it took George Floyd's death to kind of revive her situation. I feel like she was on a lot more people's radars too than
Ma'Khia.
Thank you.
Ma'Khia.
So yeah, I feel like and I of course, like I get news alerts all over the place and every day, and I haven't seen anything pop up by her in regards to like what's happening with her family or in her town, like with the cop, unless you are really Googling it. If you're Googling her name, then yeah, you'll find out more information. But it's not popping up to the surface as it was with George Floyd and some of the other individuals. And that's really, again, that's media plays a lot in here. There was another point that you had, but it is lost for now. But it will come back.
If it comes back to you, we can if y'all been with us for a while, we always end up circling back at some point.
You had touched on a really good something. I was like, I'm like, I'm gonna be good and stay quiet and let her finish.
Was it about the natives?
It wasn't specifically about that, but I will say, some other thoughts that I did have is that, one thing, we're talking about women being incarcerated. I just think when, for me, this is of course kind of a tangent, but women giving birth in prison or having to have babies in prison, that just, to me, is just so fucked up. And it's almost, I want to come down and say, I don't care what she did. Why is this woman having a baby in prison? Or I don't know. It rubs me the wrong way. And she probably goes to a hospital to have the baby, but the whole situation is just very disturbing for me.
Yeah.
That they're pregnant women in jail. Yeah. And that's always been something that has never set right with me. And the fact that, and I will say, people who go to prison or go to jail are not all bad people. And there, are innocent people in jail too, because they've been lied on or there's not enough evidence. So, okay, like, so I think with just women in general that are incarcerated, I just like, and this how difficult it must be, because a lot of people in prison, both men and women, they have children. Almost all of them, a lot of them do. And to think like for a mother to have to give birth and again, this is something I have not researched, I have not looked into, and it may be state by state basis how how that process work. Like once the mom gives birth, can she have the baby with her for a while, or do they immediately snatch the baby from her? And I'm just like, to have your child, I don't know. That's just always have disturbed me, and that's just something that came to my mind.
Yeah.
When we were just talking about women in incarceration, and I think that's something men don't have to worry about. I mean, of course, they have children that they love too, and all that, but to be pregnant in prison and then give birth and have your child eventually taken away, because the child's not going to grow up with you there. It's just, again, and I think like people may say, oh, well, that's the choice she made. Well, bitch, you know what? Life is not like that for everybody. Yeah. And it made me think about when you were talking about your introvertedness and how you were like, well, let's be honest, I don't go nowhere.
I don't.
I'm also saying it's like, I don't go nowhere either. And I will say, I try to avoid the police like the plague.
Yes.
Like, I don't, like, I'll see a cop and I go the other way. And I think that a lot of that stems from, I think about my privilege in that. I have that ability to be able to say, I don't fuck with the police. And, I know that there were the protests happening here in Chicago for Adam Toledo last week or the week before. I think I texted you about it because there was no protest and there was helicopters flying around. I was like, see, I feel like the cops are going to be around here someplace, and I just don't have time. I don't have time. But I have that privilege to be able to say, like, I'm not fucking with the police. And I feel like a lot of people in the communities that we talk about, they don't have that privilege. Like, cops are just in their neighborhoods. Yeah. And they can't avoid it. And they're in their neighborhoods because of the color of their skin. And I live in a predominantly, now it's getting a little bit more mixed, people living here, but it's predominantly kind of more skewed white. I do live kind of like Northwest Chicago. So yeah, it is, a lot of white people walking around. And of course, I think people always think, well, you live in a predominantly white neighborhood, you ain't got to be worried about much. Which I don't think that's true, right? I think that's all depending on how you look at it. But again, all this to say is like, I avoid the police like the plague. I don't even think, like, if I become one of these, like an Oprah or Rihanna, already kind of got the old school Oprah hair,
if you're watching, yes,
Oprah, and I know you're from Mississippi. I know you're born and raised in Mississippi. So we sisters in that way. So let's talk. But I just ain't got time for the police. No,
I completely understand you, because I mean,
and they have never done anything to me, like to me, like to people in my family, yes, but to me personally, I've never had a run-in with a cop.
I have never had.
Never.
Nope. Knock on wood. I never do. If I am on the road driving, I am following every single rule that I can of the road that I'm aware of to avoid cops. And I live in a neighborhood that is heavily policed, and there's a police station just a few blocks away from me. So I am always at that hyper awareness of like cops around the area and all that. But yeah, to your point, like, I understand, like, I don't want to ever want to have any run-in, whether it's here or anywhere else. I remember one time two of my guy friends and I were traveling down to Nashville, and I remember we didn't get stopped or anything, but
Lord, I gotta put him
that my friend that was driving, I was gonna sit in the back because I was like, I want to sleep. I just want to sit in the back. Y'all two can just go up front. They didn't give me that luxury to do that because they were like, we're less likely to get stopped if they see a woman in front. Oh. And I was like, but I want to sleep in the back. Like,
that's messed up.
But that stuck with me, that I didn't have to think about that because I was just like, it wasn't on the forefront of my mind. But after he told me, that stuck with me. I was like, oh, I guess. But then it's, while you're less likely, you're still likely because we're all you know,
we all
we're all Mexican in this car. So
but again, I think that's such an interesting point too, because it's like, again, the patriarchy is that she's a woman. So they're less likely to shoot you because you're a woman. And I think that's the way, and I see where it can kind of look like the focus is on Black and brown men and things that happen with them, because I think we're still looked at as like people like, well, she's a girl, she's a
right.
woman, she's less threatening. She may not be as bad as a Black guy. Like, she might have a little attitude, but she's a woman, so she can't be violent. Like, or
she or maybe she can talk herself out of the situation, or maybe she can, use her womanly guiles and everything else. This whole idea of like what we and it. I mean, we're getting way off topic at this point.
Getting way off topic,
but it falls into this whole idea of the focus on the male versus,
which still stems in white supremacy.
Yes, and I think, like, sorry that we got way off topic, but it just happens sometimes on this channel. But I think when we look at the policing state, I think we have to really address what is quote unquote sensationalized by media, what is put out there. And I think it stems historically from trying to create first Black men as threatening as individuals that you should be scared of, as for white people to be scared of, and then that expanded to brown males, and this is another group that you have to be afraid of. But because the focus was so much on them, it just creates this fear towards Black and brown men, and women are then left off somewhere else as just whether they don't matter, whether they they're less than anything, and it's this thing of women of color being less than obviously white women, and I think it just stems from all that focus just stems on that, because women of color aren't seen as anything in this country, really. And I think it's part of the police system, it's part of every other aspect in our society, and we will touch on future episodes around the workplace, looking at the medical healthcare, but I think this is part of it. The police, when we get into more of that conversation, how it started and where it's at now, I think it's rooted in that white supremacy thought of like, we need to make sure that white males aren't seen as threatening, yet the males that have done some of the worst things to women have been white males.
And again, don't get me started.
I know we're not gonna get into it, but I just
we're not. But I just think everything horrible that has happened in the world is the result of men in general, but then predominantly white men, from wars to famine, to massacres, everything, and yet they still have so much power.
Yeah,
so much power.
Because then you look at who police are killing, it continues to be Black males, brown males, and then you start seeing women of color. I wish we knew the statistics of what that looks like, and maybe in the future we can have some experts really come in and share with us and educate us a little bit more, and educate all of us, all of our listeners too, of like what that looks like. Because I think it is important to I don't want to say people are just numbers, but when you start seeing how big those numbers are, it puts it into perspective, what we're talking about, and what that real need is, to continue having these conversations, to continue highlighting the disparities and everything that's going on.
And I just love, this isn't funny, but it's so funny because we're about to transition to talk about a little bit more. But I just think so, thinking about the day that the verdict came down from the trial, Monday, last Monday. And girl, like you said, white people was just so excited. Again,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you woke white people. Y'all are awesome. But y'all be
Yes,
something else. I just think it's so, because they was just so excited.
they
They was
really were.
they were so excited. Like they, oh my god. I like my roommate who is a white woman. She was, oh my god, it was just so excited. And here all people of color was just like, okay. Whew.
I mean, you let out a breath. Like I
Let
remember
me breathe.
texting a friend and saying like they're about to read off, like they're
Yeah.
about to read off, and I'm just holding my breath in because I don't.
Yeah.
It can go either way. Like I know cities were preparing for the worst, which is
Oh yeah.
terrible. Like it's terrible to think that cities were literally were. I think gov, our governor here in Illinois had sent the National Guard to Chicago just
I didn't even know that. I didn't know. Wow. I
in
didn't know we,
preparation. I
yeah.
don't know if he had sent it activated. They did something with the National Guard, getting them ready in Chicago just in case. And it was like, I know like shopping centers across the city that had seen like rioting and looting were preparing like this whole thing. And I'm like, this is the country we live in where
Yep.
we expect the worst and it's terrible. Like I hate that we have to live like this.
It is, because it's almost like, we live in well, with the last administration, it was like a dictatorship, and then now, I mean, we still have a lot of that residual coming off of the last administration. Um, but it just seems like this is such it's like a whole new world of just being, and
Yep.
me. Even though I am, I'll admit I'm not one that will protest. I support in other ways, obviously. But I'm not a protest. Like I'm not one to go out there and protest. But I am fully supportive of the protesters. And I was thinking to myself, if they set it off tonight, burn this bitch down. Don't burn my house down. Don't burn your house down. But burn this city down. Burn it down. Because I was like, boy, it's about to be a revolution up in here if something don't happen. I mean, I think the revolution's still coming, but I do
I
believe,
hope so.
I was like, they gonna burn this city down. I was like, burn this bitch down. Burn it down. And make sure you burn down the white people neighborhoods. Okay? Burn theirs down. Go over there, go to like Michigan Avenue. But like break in, do look, whatever. Because if you're gonna do it in the white neighborhood. They have more stuff that just needs to be burned down. Burn it down. And that's all I'll say. That's it.
That's it, Marty. No, I think there's so many people I think that feel that way, right? That sort of like think of what is it going to take to bring about change, and you've tried peaceful, you try resist, and I mean there's riots and looting have happened before, but it's like what is it gonna take? Like I don't know the answer. Like if y'all have an idea, those that are listening, like let us know. If you can comment, go ahead and comment. But what is it gonna take? And you mentioned earlier systemic changes, right? Like policies and things like that. And it's gonna take some of that. It's gonna take all of us to sort of do something. And that something could be as simple as having a conversation with a neighbor about a topic that you're both uncomfortable having, right? Like nobody talking about race and accountability with police and all these things, for the most part, it isn't a fun subject. Like it's not, Martina and I talk about it all the time, and we end up being exhausted
Yeah.
after like 3 hours of us talking
Mhm.
about something, because it is exhausting
And,
topic.
and it's the same conversation. well, you know, it's, I mean, we talk about a lot, but it's just this, I mean, just in general, if we're just having the same conversations and it's like the same things that happen. Okay, so we got people getting arrested. Okay, you want to throw them in jail, but what does that really mean? Like, what does that really change? Ain't nothing changing, and you
Yeah.
can expect something different if you keep doing shit the same way. And
Yep.
it's like something's got to give. We like we using you and I saying we don't know what that is, but I think, you know, if people, you know, feel free to comment on it, on your ideas of, I don't know, just your perspectives on, you know, what do you think it will take to finally make a difference? I mean, we know systemic change, but what does that look like? You know, what is this?
Where
People
do you start?
are. People saying defund the police, as you know, we'll again talk about a little later. But what does that mean to you? Because for most of us, it doesn't mean getting rid of a police state. That's
Yeah.
not what we're saying.
And it means different things to different. It depends on who you ask, right?
Right.
Like defend the police can mean one thing to me, to you, to the police can mean one thing, to government it can mean another thing, to community leaders it means another thing. Like, what is it, and how do you ensure that you get to a place where everyone can compromise on what defunding the police is, and how do you get there? Um, so yeah, I think there's a great spot to sort of pause and and let you all let us know your comments, your thoughts, whether you're listening, if you're watching on YouTube, you know, let us know if anything struck a chord with you. Where do you think we go from here when it comes to policing in this country? And you know, we're going to continue the conversation. You'll see the next episode we'll continue with this topic, and we'll dig a little deeper into what could be next. You know, what do we see needs to happen? You know, why hasn't it happened yet? And we'll go from there. Any last thoughts, Martina, from your end?
No, I just think I hope people really enjoyed seeing our faces or listening to our voices and what we talked about today in previous episodes as well. But yeah, I echo everything you just said. I think, you know, we do need solutions, you know, because all of us, we keep, you know, talking about the negative and we can't help it. It's in our face every day, especially us living it, especially
Yep.
us being black, you know, being Mexican. We can't change that. That's just who we are. That's a part of our identity.
Yep.
And but even again, you know, for white people, you know, you're white. You can't help you're white. You can't help the color of your skin. That's just, you know, how you came into this world. And that's, you know, I think that's what us people of color, trying to make people understand, like, we all are trying to fight the same battles. You know, we all want, you know, to have a nice living. We want our kids to be great. You know, we want to have a roof over our head, bills paid, food on the
Yep.
table. You know, we want to have, you know, friendships and relationships. We all want some of the same things, you know. And I think that, and the differences that we have amongst us is what's make, to me, one thing that make the United States such, you know, it can be a great country, is that we do have people from all over the world
Yep.
that speak so many languages here. And, you know, it's just because somebody different doesn't make them bad, or,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm not even saying that's what people are even getting at, but, you know, you and I have talked about this, you know, this idea of like being, you know, being dominant or having this dominion over other people. I mean,
Yeah.
I personally don't think that way. I would never want to be dominant in the way that white supremacy has been,
Yeah.
to push other people down because you want your group of people to rise up. We can all rise together. You know,
Yeah.
we all can help each other.
Mhm.
And I think that's people, again, you know, people don't see it that way. They feel like, well, we got to take somebody else down, or they're going to come take our jobs, or they're going to get into this school.
Yes.
But so what? So what if they are? Like, so what if somebody takes your child's spot at some college? Maybe your child didn't try hard enough. And that can go for black people. That can go for brown people too. I just think like it's just so much. There's so much to unpack and to get to some sort of solution. And again, I think again, is as I mentioned, I am more progressive, a more of a progressive thinker, and I want things to be faster. But I do realize things take time. We didn't get here overnight. We're not gonna get out of this overnight.
Yeah.
We're gonna be in this a while. But anything, I still, as cliche as it sounds, anything worth having takes time. Or worth understanding. So that's all I have, and I think we're about to close out on this one. Is that right? We're gonna wrap
Yes.
it up. Okay. Well, I think that was a good wrap up. We did so good. We did so good. Okay. All right, y'all. Well, again, comment, like, share our videos, our podcast now. We're gonna be linking to it in the
Yes.
video. Ideas that you may have around topics or books or whatever. You
Yes,
know,
please.
yes, we would love to, love to hear your thoughts and feedback. And so as we wrap up, I'm Martina. This is Lyzeth, and we'll see y'all next time.
Bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye.